Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video. And today I'm excited to tell you about some of my most anticipated historical fiction releases for 2025. So today I have a list for you of works of historical fiction coming out in 2025, which I am really excited for. I think all of these sound fantastic. I've read a few of these already and I'm very excited to get to the rest. I will go through the books one by one. When I give any kind of publication dates or publisher details, that's obviously for the UK, just because that's where I'm based. Some of these may already be out in other countries or may not be coming out, but hopefully you'll be able to find out more about these books from the details below. Most of these books are coming out in the first half of this year because there just isn't so much information available for books coming out later in 2025, and they are all works of historical fiction, which is one of my absolute favourite genres. So to start off with January, in January there is a new book by Alex Hay, The Queen of the Fives. I have his first novel, The Housekeepers, on my TBR. I got that for Christmas. I'm so excited to read it. And his second book sounds amazing too. This is being published by Headline Review, and it is set in the Victorian period, which, you know, I always am very excited about. And it's about a con woman who is trying to steal a big fortune from a very wealthy family and has only 5 days to do so. So the combination of that really fun sounding plot with a Victorian setting and a sort of short timeline, that just sounds like something I'll really enjoy. Sounds fantastic. I've heard amazing things about The Housekeepers, so I will probably read The Housekeepers first, but I'm definitely going to try and get my hands on a copy of The Queen of the Fives soon. Then also coming out in January, this time from Atlantic Books, is The Players by Minette Walters. This is a novel set in late 17th century England in 1685, looking at the tempestuous days of the Monmouth Rebellion, which was basically a failed coup, I suppose, an attempt to depose James II as king. I do feel like my historical fiction often skews 18th century onwards. I mean, usually 19th century, but 18th century onwards I read from. And so whenever I see a book that sounds really interesting from before the 18th century, I try and make a note of it, because I do feel like sometimes I am in danger of neglecting earlier time periods. So I think this one just sounds really interesting, and I liked the look of the cover as well. Another book with a cover that caught my eye is The House with Nine Locks by Philip Gray. This is being published in January from Harville Secker. I do realise that this video is probably going to be up quite late in January. Maybe some of these books are already out, but anyway. The House with Nine Locks is a historical mystery novel about a young woman in post-war Flanders who inherits a mysterious house, but in order to get her inheritance, in order to have this house, she has to do something morally or at least legally dubious. That sounds very intriguing in premise, and it has a really fun cover, so I feel like this could be a really interesting read. Then the final January release I want to talk about is from Simon & Schuster, and that is The Blackbirds of St Giles by Lila Kane. This is a pen name for two authors writing together, Marcia Hutchinson and Kate Griffin. I think this is Marcia Hutchinson's first book, but Kate Griffin wrote Finshade, which I haven't read, but I keep hearing amazing things about and definitely want to at some point. And this new book, The Blackbirds of St Giles, sounds amazing too. So this is set in late 18th century London, and we're following a young man called Daniel who arrives in London with his sister Pearl. Daniel escaped from a sugar plantation in Jamaica, fought for the British in the American War of Independence, and was granted his freedom. So he and his sister Pearl travel to London hoping to kind of start a new life, and everything kind of goes on from there. This sounds really intriguing, very high up on my list. Then coming in February from Manila Press, part of Bonnier Books UK, we have Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, which is a retelling of Camilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu, set in the late Victorian period, about a woman called Lenore who travels to a mysterious estate called Nethershaw that her husband has recently purchased, and then a carriage accident brings her into collision with a mysterious woman called Camilla. It is gothic and vampiric and feminist and queer. You should all be really excited for Hungerstone. Coming from Michael Joseph in February is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. I loved her first novel, Black Cake, so I'm really excited to read her second one. I'm pretty sure this is historical fiction, but it might not be historical fiction, or it may well be like Black Cake, which was sort of had a historical strand but was mostly contemporary. I'm not entirely certain from the description, but I'm very excited for it, so I thought I would just include it in this video anyway. So Good Dirt is about a woman called Ebby, who runs into her ex-fiance and his new girlfriend unexpectedly. And then we kind of look back on the events that took place in the history of their relationship and the history of their family, and how it's led up to this point. Now that I'm saying the description out loud, I feel like it probably isn't very historical. I feel like it's probably going to be set like present day and 20 years ago. But I'm very excited for it anyway, so it's fine. Also coming out in February, this time from Hartwood is Neftis by Rachel Louise Driscoll. So this novel is set in the Victorian period, which, you know, I'm always excited for. And it's about a young woman who is an Egyptologist, and what happens when she becomes like mixed up in a legend about an ancient Egyptian goddess. So that sounds very intriguing, a kind of mix of mythology and Victorian stuff. So I'm very excited for that one. I think it could be really, really interesting. Another book I think sounds really interesting is Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. This is being published by Hodder and Stoughton in February, and it follows two teenage sweethearts in 1940s Shanghai, and then picks up with them sort of many years later on in their life when they encounter each other again in the 1960s and then I think in the 2000s. So this book is kind of split across several time periods, charting the sort of long love story of this couple. That just sounds really, really intriguing to me. It definitely sounds like a book I would love. Then also coming out in February, this time from Sphere, who are part of Little Brown, is The Woman in the Wallpaper by Laura Jones. This novel is set kind of before and during the French Revolution, and it's a story about the relationship between two sisters, what happens when they start working at this wallpaper factory, and about the kind of gothic, mysterious house that the master of the factory lives in. So it's a kind of combination of a novel about the French Revolution and a gothic big country house mystery, which is very effective. I really enjoyed this one. Definitely a book to be excited for this year. So we're now into March, and one book I think sounds really intriguing is A Calamity of Noble Houses by Amira Ghanem. This is translated from the Arabic by Miled Pfizer and Karen McNeil, and it is set from sort of 1935 onwards, spanning many decades, looking at two families across several generations in 20th century Tunisia. I just think this sounds really, really intriguing and very much my kind of book. This is being published by Europa Editions, and it sounds like a fantastic read. Another March release, this time from Fig Tree, is The Eights by Joanna Miller. This book is a kind of coming-of-age story campus novel set in the 1920s about the friendship between four women who are studying at Oxford University. This sounds really intriguing, and I do love a campus novel, and a historical campus novel is always quite fun, and the 1920s is still sort of relatively early in the days of women going to university, so I think this will be quite an interesting novel in terms of how it looks at gender as well, so really looking forward to that one too. Being published by Picador is The Paris Express by Emma Donoghue. I really love Emma Donoghue's books. They're just reliably fantastic. I've read, I think, 4 of her novels, all of which I loved. My absolute favourite is The Wonder, which is just one of my favourite works of historical fiction, full stop. Is it my favourite work of historical fiction? It's probably my second favourite, isn't it? The Watchmaker of Filigree Street is probably at the top. Anyway, Emma Donoghue's a wonderful writer, and I'm always excited when she has a new book out, even though she has a massive backlist that I need to catch up on. But The Paris Express sounds really interesting. It's set in the 19th century on a train, and it's about all the different people brought together on this train and all of their secrets, and that just sounds great, doesn't it? And Emma Donoghue is always wonderful, so very excited for that too. Then a historical mystery that I think sounds quite intriguing is Miss Burnham and the Loose Thread by Lynn Knight. This is being published by Bantam Books and is set in the 1920s. I think it's a kind of cozy mystery about what happens when a dressmaker ends up investigating one of her clients' kind of mysterious suitors. This sounds like a fun read, so definitely one I'll be looking out for this year. Then finally for March, I wanted to mention A Fortune Most Fatal by Jessica Bull. This is being published by Penguin Michael Joseph, and it's the second in a series, the Miss Austen Investigate series, following Jane Austen as she investigates crimes. So in this novel, Jane Austen has gone to stay with her wealthy brother Edward in Kent, and she finds there is an interloper, a stranger staying amongst her relations in Kent, who claims to be a princess, but to Jane's mind seems more like a con woman, and everything kind of goes on from there. I'll talk more about this book in my January wrap-up, but it is fun and delightful, but also dark and thought-provoking and really well written. I love the way Jessica Bull creates Jane Austen as a character. She feels very true to the Jane Austen that you read in her letters, and it's just really, really well done. I love this series a lot. Moving on to April, I am very, 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 very excited for The Hymn to Die Niis by Natasha Pulley. Natasha Pulley is like my favourite author who didn't die in the 19th century, and I'm always very impressed by the innovativeness and subtlety and cleverness of her work, and I'm always excited to see what she does next. So this new book, which is being published by Orion, is a Greek myth retelling, so it's set in ancient Greece, and is a reimagining of the story of Die Niis, who was the Greek god of like madness and revelry and wine, I think. So that sounds great, doesn't it? I would basically happily read anything Natasha Pulley ever wrote, but this sounds great and the cover is lovely. I am in general not the best at getting to new releases, and I can't guarantee how many of these books I will read this year, but I will definitely read The Hymn of Die Niis very shortly after it comes out, and I'm sure I will love it. Also coming out in April, this time from Penguin Michael Joseph, is The Midnight Carousel by Fiza Saeed McGlynn. So this is a novel set in 1920s Chicago about a young woman who moves to the US to start a new life, finds a beautiful old carousel, wants to make her fortune by setting up this carousel, but doesn't know that it is mysteriously linked to the disappearances of several people many years before, and everything kind of goes on from there. So I think this is a sort of historical mystery crime novel, and I'm really excited to read it. Somehow I don't have any books down for May. I'm sure there are some amazing works of historical fiction coming out in May, but they are apparently not quite on my radar. Anyway, in June, Manila Press, part of Bonnier Books UK, are publishing The Tarot Reader of Versailles. This is another French Revolution novel, and it tells the story of two very different women, one French, one Irish, and how they are drawn together by the French Revolution and their interest in tarot cards, as you might figure from the title. I always love novels about the French Revolution. I feel like it's such an interesting time period to explore. This is another one you should all be very excited for in 2025. Then 2 July releases before I wrap up this video. One I'm really looking forward to is The Art of a Lie by Laura Shepherd Robinson. This is being published by Mantle, who are part of Pam Macmillan, and this sounds great. So it's set in mid-18th century London and follows a woman called Hannah Cole, whose husband has been murdered. Following her husband's death, she is struggling financially when a magistrate and author accuses her late husband of having gained his money illegally, and this draws Hannah Cole into even more dangerous situations. In 2024, I read and absolutely loved The Square of Sevens by Laura Shepherd Robinson. I still haven't read her previous books, and I definitely want to get to them at some point, but the new one, The Art of a Lie, sounds excellent too. I just think she is such a fantastic writer, and I can't wait to read everything she's ever written one day. Then another historical fiction writer who I really love is Sophie Irwin, and she has a new book out this July from HarperCollins. Sophie Irwin writes really wonderful novels set in the Regency period, and I really loved her first 2 books, A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting and A Lady's Guide to Scandal, and her third book, How to Lose a Lord in 10 Days. What an amazing title. It sounds fantastic. So this is about a young woman who is persuaded to accept the proposal of a man she very much does not want to marry, and she only has 10 days before the betrothal is announced publicly in order to find a way to force him to break off the engagement. I am certain that, like Sophie Irwin's previous books, this novel will be delightful and fun and romantic, while also really thought-provoking and clever and looking at really interesting aspects of the Regency period. I am so excited for this one. I am so sure it will be amazing. And it's coming out in July, so maybe I'll read it for Jane Austen July this year. We'll see. Okay, so those are, I think 19 or 20 works of historical fiction coming out during 2025 that I'm excited for. Please do let me know down in the comments, have you heard of any of these books? Are there any of these books that you are excited for? And are there any new releases coming out in 2025 that you are really looking forward to, historical or otherwise? I would really love to know. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.